The Bro Show.
Happy day! Good morning! Welcome to The Bro Show where we talk about everything and anything. This is your professional barkada. Magandang umaga. My name is DJ Dudes, your true Manila man, and I am with the Bro Force, starting with Mr. Kasaysayan, the Professor Matt Nasser-Badel. Prof, good morning.
Good morning, DJ Dudes. Half a day, happy Friday sa ating mga tagapakinig. Tama ka dyan, kasaysayan, kasi alam mo, kanina pa tayo nagkukwentuhan dito at ang dami ko natutunan sa kasaysayan ko. Kaya I'm really excited to really have our guests introduced. Kaya simulan na natin to.
And of course, to complete our Triforce, we got Mr. Civica, the wired man, Mr. Bojo Molina. Boj, good morning!
Magandang umaga, dudes. Magandang umaga, Prof. At Civica. Sige, gagamitin ko na yung tunay na last name ko dito. Punong Bayan. Yan ang aking pag-uusapan natin ngayon. Medyo we're gonna dig deep into a part of our history also at mapag-uusapan natin ng ating mga literatures and everything. So, dudes, tara na. Umpisa na natin to. Excited na talaga ako.
Excited talaga ako. Ang galing ng ating guest. Fountain of knowledge. Very interesting. Very popular vlogger. And a whole lot more. Please welcome to our Bro Show, to our show, Miss Mona Magno Veluz. Miss Mona, good morning.
Hello, everyone. It's such a wonderful honor to be here among the three of you. I'm excited din. No, ano bang pag-uusapan natin ngayong umaga?
All about being Filipino, history, and a whole lot more. Alam na alam to ni Miss Mona. Prof, Wardman, I know you have a lot of questions. Go ahead.
Alright, simulan ka na, DJ Dudes. Alam mo, si Miss Mona is really known to be really one of the pillars of, correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Mona, the president of the Philippine Autism Society. In fact, I think we've had you in our school before, no, as our distinguished speaker in UST. Pero recently, I think less than 2 years ago or a year ago, you started to dabble in history and you became an internet sensation with your TikTok videos on history and your Facebook page. So tell us, how did you start about with your interest in history and paano siya napunta sa social media, which really made you really a household name at the moment?
Yeah, well, actually, I've had many careers in my life. I actually am a business major and I have an MA in economics. I spent many years in corporate, so I was in communications. I have a certificate in strategic communications from the London School of Business. So very corporate talaga yung background ko. But in my heart, I knew that it didn't make me happy. So I started out as a hobby was genealogy. I wanted to do a unique gift for my husband's family. So I did a genealogy project, right? And that snowballed. And this was around the 2000s. Since the 2000s, people would come up to me, like friends, Mona, can you help me research this? And I get paid. So I created this reputation of being able to research genealogy well while I was in corporate. So it was a good side gig. And when I finally decided to retire some years back, I was able to do it full time. My service with the Autism Society Philippines is really out of my advocacy for disability inclusion. My eldest son, who is turning 30 this year, is on the autism spectrum. And when he graduated from high school, we said, now it's time to give back. Because when he was growing up, we were always going to the Autism Society. Hey, where can we have a haircut? Is there a seminar we can attend? We have this particular problem. So they were there for us. And it was I had this need to also give back to those who have younger kids. And I started out as a volunteer writer, and I was nominated to the board, and now I'm the longest serving national president for the Autism Society Philippines. Now the whole TikTok part that started last year. It only started last year, like in June. I think the pandemic was starting to weigh on me. I had this particular sadness that I couldn't snap out of. I tried being a plantita. I tried making bread. The whole, the whole standard, I guess.
Business.
Oh, di ba? A lot of people caught in the pandemic would do that. So I did that. And I said, I wanted to do something at night, something productive, something that would be creative. I asked my kids, what's TikTok? So I asked my kids and they showed me. I learned the basics, but I couldn't learn the basics by just watching it. So I said, might as well create content. My kids told me, Mom, no dancing. Okay, that was a basic thing. We are not going to dance, but yeah, of course not. But so I realized, okay, what will I do then? I know history, so even if nobody watched me, okay lang yon, kasi I was learning the platform, and it was an intellectual curiosity that I had to satisfy. Even if people didn't watch me, okay lang. And it turned out that people were interested in what I had to say. So really, that's how it started. And it was and then so that I started in July, and in August my father died. And when my father died, it was more important for me to be active because it was difficult at night when you think about when you're quiet. But quiet time is usually the hardest. So instead of being quiet, I had TikTok. I had to plan for my TikTok. I was doing my TikToks at night, so it helped me cope. So the whole TikTok thing was a coping mechanism, really. It wasn't a big plan, but the love for history has always been there, and that the recently, not so recently, but 20 years that I've discovered I was good at research. I had this talent for it, so that's why we are where we are.
The way I see it, it's not just because of interest of Miss Mona. Sa lahat ng ginagawa niya, whether leading an organization, research, and now, of course, sharing so much knowledge about history, it is rooted not from interest. I believe so. I think it's rooted from love. May pagmamahal Kasi nararamdaman yan sa mga TikToks, grabe yung passion na nararamdaman namin. Talagang may sting Meron talagang palo sa mga TikTok ni Miss Mona. Warman, go ahead.
Okay, Miss Mona, meron palang similarity ang Bro Show with you. We are a byproduct of the pandemic. This show has been also developed to this point right now because of naghahanap tayo lahat ng outlets Yan ang ginawa natin, no? But anyways, yeah, I've seen your page on Facebook, the Mighty Magulang thing, and then I've seen your content and everything. And then ako usually pag one ini-stitch ko yan then there's this one TV show in the Philippines na may mga housemates, no? Parang, I don't know, what's your take when, ako kasi lumaki ako sa time na alam ko yung, pag tinanong yan, alam natin, automatic yung sagot. And then, the term that they have for Gomburza was Majoha. What was your reaction? I know you're active on social media, so definitely you've seen that, maybe firsthand pa. And what was your reaction and how did you feel?
Actually, so I did share earlier that my father was a teacher. And he had always taught us that you should not shame people for not knowing something.
Yes.
In fact, it is something that you can address, di ba? Kung makakatulong ka, tumulong ka. Pero you should not shame them for not having the skills that you have. In the same way that ask me about trigonometry, I won't be able to share anything with you, right? So we shouldn't shame them for that. Pero I see it as very sad. Kasi nga, they found a set of, yung hard drive nila is full of things that are relevant to them, but history is not part of it. So it was sadness that I felt, and somehow the first thing I did was I asked my children the same questions. Kasi I didn't want to fail as a parent. Sabi ko, anak, alam niyo ba itong mga answers? So I asked them the same questions and parang sigh of relief. Ay, nako, my kids know the answers. So ayun, it was sadness to be honest. Yun na feel ko. And whether they want to address it or not, it's really not the point. But I think what I wish for everyone is a little bit more curiosity about history. Kasi hindi mo mapag-aralan kung hindi mo gusto Di ba? Walang pilitan. After a certain point, wala nang pilitan kung anong gusto mong pag-aralan. So I just hope and wish that for everyone na sana relevant sa kanila ang kasaysayan enough para pag-aralan nila lang kahit konti lang.
And this is dudes, what Miss Mona is doing right now, making it relevant to the younger generation on how you apply history on the platforms that they're familiar. I think that's the thing that we're doing really, really well. And we kudos to that.
Yes, gustong-gusto ko na
Thank you.
chinek mina. Gustong-gusto ko na chinek muna ni Miss Mona, yung mga kids niya. Alam niyo ba to? Meron kagad sense of responsibility, di ba? I have to look within kung nagawa ko yung responsibility ko to educate, of course, my family, my inner circle, right? Pero we were talking about this earlier. If this is my point of view, hindi ganun kamali yung mga sumagot. Let me just explain this to our viewers and to our listeners. So there's this show, tinanong kung sino yung tatlong paring martir. Di ba? Well, of course, we all know Gomburza, or at least the majority knows it's Gomburza, coming from the names of the three priests, right? Gomez, Burgos, Zamora. Ang sagot ng mga contestants, Majoha, right? Pero yung Majoha, Pinoy nila from their first names, noong mga same priest. So I guess they have the same idea kung sino man ang nagsimula ng history na, okay, ipapangalan natin yung tatlong pare in one name. Parang ganun din yung iniisip nila, di ba? So I guess the question is, ano yung mas gusto natin, Gomburza o Majoha?
Dapat mahoha.
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 Miss Mona, going back to history, okay? There is a growing, I guess, this interest in history. Nung panahon natin, nararamdaman na rin naman natin yan, di ba? We kept on asking, why are we studying this and this? Ano ang relevance ng mga dates, ng mga pangalan, ng mga pets, ng mga bayani, etc., etc., di ba? So I guess the sentiments are the same. Siguro mas malaki lang. But the sad thing is, you have mentioned na nawala yung gravity ng history sa curriculum natin. Going back the days, talagang naididikdik to sa mga isipan natin from elementary, maybe even before elementary, kindergarten, talagang na itutusok yan sa mga isip natin. So we are very familiar. Pero ngayon, medyo nagdwindle. May ibang perspective ang curriculum, ang gobyerno. What can you say about that?
I find it really sad. I also share that I have a school age child who is not studying history the way I studied history. So in the current curriculum today, grade school and high school, history has been removed as a subject. It is now integrated into all of the other subjects. So the kids in the STEM track would study the history of science. The kids in humanities would be studying the history of psychology. That's what they are looking at. So yun gano'n, parang integrated siya. And nawala yung deep dive really into history. And even a lot of people even talk about martial law, na parang it has been so superficially covered by our curriculum today. Kids know about the names, dates, places, but nobody really understood why it happened, how it happened, and why it's relevant. Yun eh. So that is something that I see. Aside from history itself, I lament that we do not study the old texts like El Filibusterismo, Noli Me Tangere, Florante at Laura, Ibong Adarna. All of those stuff that we studied in high school are no longer discussed at length. They're only discussed as a lesson. So nawala yung those are things that were fun for me. So they missed out on that. But I really don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that kids nowadays learn in a different way. They have so much information available to them at the click of a button, and that perhaps it's just morphing the way we teach them. And siguro one of the challenges of educators these days is not just the availability or giving them information, but also giving them the right information. So we're talking, dealing in facts, comparing perspectives in a way parang mas lumalim ng konti. Kasi madali na yung fact eh. Andiyan na yung fact eh. Ngayon, ang didiscuss nyo na lang, bakit? Paano? Uulitin ba natin to? Those are the things about history that we should, I guess, study a little bit more.
Ms. Mona, you mentioned perspective. You've mentioned kung uulitin ba natin ito. Yun ang mga naibibigay ng history eh. Kasi yung iba, lalo na, okay, yung mga maling ginawa, quote-unquote, mga maling ginawa ng mga forefathers, na mga unang tao, na mga unang leaders natin. Pag nakita natin na okay, mali ito, tapos nakita natin sa ngayon na nangyayari, we can easily analyze it. We can easily, 'di ba? We can easily identify it, 'di ba?
I have a question for Ms. Mona. Kasi Ms. Mona is definitely an influence to really share what is really factual. Pero ngayon with social media proliferating, maraming mga naglalabasang mga fake news, alam mo yun, mga unverified sources that influences our youth. Ano sa tingin niyo nagiging epekto nito with our youth together with subjects not being focused, like there's not a lot of focus on history? What do you think is the impact sa ating mga kabataan ngayon?
That's another thing that I lament. Just reading my comment section, when you tell these kids that these are the sources, you can check it, you can verify it independently, they still question it because it is something that is against something they watched before. So social media, the platforms, and those who create content really need to level up in terms of our, I guess, ethics. Kasi talagang ang daming misinformation. Ito lang, it's election season now. Day in and day out, merong bagong material na sigurado na false siya. To a point that now, there are news organizations, institutions like colleges, universities, researchers coming together, creating fact-checking groups to fight this kind of misinformation. Kasi it is such a, I don't know, disservice to our country to do this, just to put forward or to push one agenda. Nakakahiya. And if you look at it in the context of history, talagang, oh my God, super kontrabida talaga yung mga taong ganun. Diba?
But Ms. Mona, here's the thing, diba? What really bothers me, it's really mind-boggling na may mga fake news na obvious naman na fake news. Pero bakit may naniniwala?
Ay, alam mo, dudes, hindi ko rin alam. Totoo lang.
It's super clear.
I don't know. It is also, I think, I don't fault people who believe fake news, at least those who do not have the means to verify, or if they only watch or read a certain thing. Because those who are purveyors of fake news have been working on this for a while. I didn't even notice it was happening because I was busy living my life. Tapos a year before the elections, you start reading, oh, what? This is a thing? You actually have to question how it started. Pero simple things like there are people who bought the cheapest tabloids, the ones that go for 5 pesos. And they have very dramatic headlines. And if you are somebody who can only spend 5 pesos on information, then that's what you buy. And that's the news that you read. If you are a young person who's spending so much time on YouTube, or a retired person spending so much time on YouTube, this is also what is pushed to you. So that's what you read. So when somebody pushes back on the truth, I think it is because they are also victims of misinformation themselves, and it takes a while. It takes a while to give them the facts, to show them some sources, to to allow them to come back to the real world. And I've met people like that. Na I never knew that that was a thing. So I've had people kind of switch because of the information that I share. And I'm thankful for that. We're not totally hopeless.
Yes, thank you. Speaking of hope, kasi kapag nagpatuloy ito, right now it's very rampant. Kung mamamayani ang fake news sa atin at maraming maniniwala dito, it will tell us two things, di ba? We are a bunch of liars, that's one, and we are lacking insights. Not to determine which is fake and what is true, di ba? Nakakalungkot nga yun. Now I am lamenting as well. Professor, Wardman.
Ang sarap ng usapan natin. Pero isa lang ang masasabi ko, I found this quote, fake news makers are master mind conditioners. Kino-condition yung mind mo of things na talagang binobombard ka ng information na even though it's created, not actually based on facts, they will push it to a point na yung the truth will be questioned, right? So going to this question of mine, because we're talking about history, we're talking about recent things na nangyari about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and then the past also. For historical, i-re-envision mo, ma'am, Miss Mona, what do you think is the best, you consider the best way of breaking this fake news?
So I look at two things. First is you have to teach digital literacy. Your kids and you should know how to block off bad sites. Don't read this, don't listen to them. You also have to spot a troll. You know how to spot somebody who is not honest, like even the name pa lang mali na, or somebody who likes aliases. Yon, red flag na sa akin yon. So that's a whole seminar in itself, the whole digital literacy. The second thing is we have to teach kids, they have to be able to analyze for themselves. They have to be able to break down situations and see and have arguments around certain points. I also teach my kids about logical fallacies. Now, when you're talking to somebody on social media, you have to learn when this person is trying to divert your
Yes.
thinking, that this is not a valid point. And in many ways, my son is teaching me this kasi my son does debate. So, ang daming mga fundamentals that are going out the door on social media. So, ang sinasabi ko lang sa mga anak ko, you have to have higher standards. You have to hold yourselves to higher standards in social media if ever you want to interact. These are the basics. But I don't think that it is all at home. I think the government also has responsibilities in addressing this. They started with a cyberbullying law, so there's that, and then there's a cyber crime law which outlines, I guess, repercussions for cyber libel, for identity theft, all of that. So meron ng basics, pero ang problema natin ngayon yung historical denialists and historical revisionists. And I want to see a point in time where, like, parang sa Germany, bawal sabihin na the Holocaust didn't exist. It is crime in their country to say that that didn't happen or that wasn't an important part of their history. So I would just like to see that kind of, I guess, firm commitment to the truth. I've also heard of proposal for a truth commission, which would handle this kind of area. The valid, and I think in the proposal that I read, they were talking about, like, how will you validate if somebody is a hero, like somebody who served the country, all of that. So parang it's going to be an arm of both the Department of Justice and, to a certain degree, the researchers and the historians, diba? So I'd like to see that happen. Good start na nga yung Freedom of Information Act. I also like that. Kasi if you are a researcher and you want to know how much did the government spend in 1965 for this project, you can ask the foi.gov.ph to get that information.
Let's talk about a more, current occurrences. Revisionism, you mentioned, Ms. Mona. Merong dalawang schools of thought. May nagsasabi na binabago ang history, particularly the martial law. May nagsasabi naman na, no, we are not revising the history, our history, we are correcting it. At mali ang naituro sa inyo ng mga bata kayo. What are your thoughts there?
I think it's dangerous to generalize that all things that you revise are actually corrections. There are valid, kasi correction and revision is the same, di ba? I think it is more what the clear demarcation is between revisionism and denialism. Kasi yung revisionism, it happens kapag mali yung information mo from the past. And I agree na halimbawa, they said that the last general to surrender to the Americans was Miguel Malvar. For the longest time, siya yon. Pero they found out something new na, hindi, si Simeon Ola pala. So recently, they recognized Simeon Ola as the last general to surrender to the Americans. So that is revision. So we revised what we knew of the past because there's new information. Now, when you say that martial law was a good thing, or that our economy during the martial law era was better than the era after, it is denying the fact. So I think those are two different things. Correcting for the sake of giving better information is one thing, pero correcting or revising for the sake of feeding one's agenda, that's another.
Ms. Mona, I will dig deeper on this. Okay, why is it the martial law era not a better era compared to, again, the era after that?
I was alive during that era, and I have to admit that our family, we were fortunate. My father was in an upwardly mobile job. We were stable. In fact, our lives became better during the martial law years. But when I talk to my husband is the 10th of 10 kids, and his brothers were arrested during the first quarter storm. And when I put myself in their shoes, like you're a college student and your future was taken away from you. Because when they were arrested, they came out. They were already in their mid-20s. They were in jail for that long. So parang their youth was stolen from them. I just feel bad for my husband's family, or my husband's brothers, because the only thing they did was they articulated dissent, and I think that's unfair. And they weren't the only ones. Madami. That era, from a human rights perspective, is probably one of the more rigorous, parang from a research standpoint, and parang yung rigorous yung research that went into that. There is a commission that we have created to provide support to those who were victims of martial law and human rights violations. So may ahensya ng gobyerno yan. And from an economic standpoint, that and that's what I studied, talagang hindi. People can talk about the edifices, the structure, but that does not register in our macroeconomic indices. So I only read the numbers, and the things that sticks to me is the fact that in 1984 we had 50% inflation, so which means ang mahal ng mga bilihin. In 1986, or sorry, 1985, our loan level was 3 times our income. It's like, diba? Anyone, kung meron kang utang na 3 times as much as what you earn, paano na lang ang buhay mo? And also, there was mass unemployment. It was just a bad time from an economic standpoint. And I continue to have conversations online with people arguing with me about why it wasn't so. And I always go back to the numbers.
So basketball, we have this term, numbers don't lie, right? Ms. Mona, but I will play the devil's advocate here, okay? Just for the sake of fairness as well, diba? May mga na-arresto during the martial law. There are a lot of people who are saying, kasi meron silang ginawang mali. Okay, inflation. Ngayon naman may inflation. Malaki ang utang nun. Ngayon naman nangungutang pa rin tayo. Okay?
Mas malaki ngayon, di ba?
Ngayon, structures, nagagamit pa rin natin. I guess, we can address those concerns. And then I guess the question is, paano, mayroon bang perspective then? Or paano ba natin masasabi na may nadulot bang maganda ang martial law? Baka meron naman.
I guess if you were an artist I genuinely believe that during that time, the arts were given so much attention, like dance and performance. That was a golden time to be an artist. There, the Marcos couple actually were benefactors to Cecilica, who was a pianist, diba? So I think that time, the Marcos era, was golden years for art. Genuinely.
Oh, thank you, Miss Mona, for being so fair and so honest. Oh, parts, diba? Okay. I mean, looking at both perspective. Professor Tito Bod, go ahead.
Going back, doon nga sa sinabi ko kanina na I think, and I just want to take your point on that thing. How could a parent like me translate those actual things, not the hearsay, not factual, not assumptions, not the ones that I only hear, hindi yung mga marites news, di ba, yung mga marites news, going to do sa factual thing. What is our responsibility as people? Ako, I was born 1973. So I'm a martial law baby, but I didn't experience martial law. My parents did. And they translated to me to a point na maiintindihan ko. So how is a young parent or a parent right now who's born on the years of those years or previously or current right now yung mga bata, minsan kasi maaga na sila nagpapamilya ngayon, how could we strengthen that actual information and not just based on those things na madali kang ma-convince lang because you're hearing it?
You know what? I think there is a limit to what parents can talk about. I mean, we can talk about our experience, sure, but we cannot tell our kids what to think about it. Diba? Parang they can be interested in it, sure. At the end of the day, they will make their own decisions. So it is not the facts that we share. It is not the details that we share, although we still do. It is really teaching them critical thinking. I think that's important. I'd like to share now. My mom was a diehard Marcos loyalist, and my father was not. So in our household, they were on the opposite sides of the fence. Now my mom was doing her thing, my dad was doing his thing, and for us children, it was really up to us to process what they were saying. Kasi parang almost they had two separate truths, di ba? Pero that worked for us kasi we heard both sides of the conversation. I think that is the responsibility of parents. Now, you have to encourage your kids to listen to other perspectives before making their decisions. So I like that what you said kanina, Dear Jules, na dudes, because you forced me to look at the other perspective, diba? And that's something that we always need to do and to check ourselves. And that's something we need to teach the kids. So
critical
thinking. It doesn't
Okay.
matter kung diretso from us or they read a book or they heard it from their teacher, but they have to have critical thinking. They have to know how to process it. And hopefully nga, because of the values that we teach them, there are certain absolutes like, do not lie, do not steal, do not kill. Given all of that framework, when they apply the critical thinking, they also apply the values that we taught.
Ms. Mona, again, there are so many people who are really pushing for, okay, maganda ang era na to. Okay? Let's talk about numbers now. Let's go into details. Yan, para mas klaro, di ba? In terms of our economy back then, is it good? You mentioned that it wasn't good in all levels, in a way, di ba? Why it isn't? Let's just go to details.
Like I mentioned earlier, that in early 1980s, really that was the critical time. This was a point in our history where the bad practices of the 70s kind of came to an end, and talagang that's when we started paying for all of that. And what were these bad practices? Crony capitalism, corruption, graft, all of that came to this point. At this point, let's start off with 1983. In 1983, the Philippines had to declare a debt moratorium. It means that our debt was so big that our national treasury cannot cover debt servicing. So that means wala tayong pambayad. Hindi tayo makamake ng minimum payment, ika nga sa credit card. So what did we do? We took short-term loans. Short-term loans to pay for loans. Classic, di ba? Classic behavior of somebody who is going to go into debt. And, di ba? So, it came to a point in 1984, 1985, when there was a crisis there was an oil crisis, right? So there was also a crisis when it came to our foreign exchange. What happened? We didn't have any more foreign exchange, so nothing to pay with. What happened? And then also Ninoy Aquino was killed around in 83, right? So people were going out, leaving the country. They were afraid of the political scenarios and the investment scenarios. Why would you put your money there when the environment was so volatile? So in 84 and 85, we had the lowest growth in our GDP. It was, if I'm not mistaken, something like -7, and that's our I think our record, and it is almost the same as the growth of our GDP during the pandemic. So it's really that bad. Parang ganun ka walang nangyayari sa economy natin.
Pero walang
And-
pandemic nun.
Walang pandemic noon, pero ganun kalaki yung negative growth nung bansa. And after the Marcoses left, it went back to normal. Actually, in my TikTok, diba, you also saw that there was I put forth also our employment rates were also at an all-time low. The amount of money our money was worth, how much a regular worker would earn, all of those together painted a picture of how difficult life was for the normal Filipino. And for anyone who said, no, it wasn't difficult, we were okay during martial law, you were perhaps one of the lucky ones, and kudos to you and your family. But that was the time that there was starvation in some parts of Visayas. People were not eating rice; they were eating corn. It just wasn't a good time for everyone. It was a good time for some, but not for all. There were some people who were worth 1 billion pesos by the time they ran away from the country in 1986. Yeah, because they were friends with the right people. So it was that kind of environment where the difference between the richest and the poorest was just so vast. And people will always question the amount of graft and amount of corruption that happened and plunder. But the fact that we are recovering plundered money from different accounts all over the world today, but it means something was stolen. Kasi something was returned. In fact, the Philippines lost a lot of cases, pero the fact also remains that we still gained some. The administrations that came after, whether it was Cory or FVR or the others, they only had 6 years compared to Marcos's 20. And they did, I think, they had a role. That's my view on it. When you look at the history, si Cory, her contribution, even if she wasn't qualified, in my view, she wasn't qualified as a public servant, she did bring back the democratic institutions. That's her thing. See, FVR now had to start doing things, and he was the architect behind liberalization, meaning they had to break down monopolies. They had to break down the oligopolies.
Yeah.
Diba? So they liberalized. They wanted investments to come in. So that was his shtick, so to speak. And so the administrations that came after really had their own role to play in improving the country, given where they were in that particular time. And for people always compare, what did this guy do? This guy do? This guy do? This guy do? You just have to. You have to give me a metric, diba? You have to give a metric on what you want to measure, and some guys will fare better than others. But overall, I think in terms of intention, they all intended to do right by the people. Nobody came in with the intention to plunder. Although we did have a president that plundered nga pala.
Miss Mona, there's a saying,
Look,
right? The roads to hell are paved with good intentions.
that's true. Pero yun nga, we only had one convicted plundering president. Just one. The others weren't convicted.
Mhm. Yes. I guess it's a huge thing for our country, kaya medyo nagiging vicious cycle. Kasi hindi tayo nagiging firm sa ating justice. Hindi tayo nagiging firm sa ating punishment. Mhm.
Yeah, that's and it's, I think, the Catholics in us that, we pardon, we give absolution.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I think justice really cannot be carried. Justice has to be carried first before there's healing, before there's unity,
I
before
agree.
there's growth.
Mhm.
People keep telling me, move on.
Yeah.
History na yan. Move
Yes.
on. Na,
But we need to. But we need to learn from the history for us to be able to have a better setting in life. Definitely.
I think so. And define moving on. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting.
Yeah.
Moving on
exactly.
doesn't mean not learning from it.
Yeah, and I think you have to treat history more as a science rather than as a narrative. Because in science, as you learn, as you record historical, you learn from it, diba? You innovate, you improve. And that's essentially what happens to history when you make it scientific. So,
Yeah,
agree.
it's a good point. And research na. Research, we follow the scientific method when we research. And it's not, people have that assumption na, okay, na-carry away ka lang sa nabasa mong libro. No, you validate. You go for primary docs. Hindi yan feeling na yun ang history.
Opinions are not enough, diba?
Yeah.
Hindi pwede. Yes, we are entitled to our own opinions, but we are not entitled to our own facts. Diba? Research will prove that. Numbers will prove that. Again, concrete studying will prove that. Here's the thing. May mga solid talaga. Solid from both sides. Kahit ano pang sabihin, hindi magbabago ng isip. Kahit ano sabihin, hindi magagalit. Kahit ano sabihin, hindi maniniwala. How can we, even though that we show facts, even though that we show, again, coming from both sides, di ba? Masama na to si hindi na mababago yan. Ito, mabuti si ganito. Hindi na rin mababago yun, di ba? Lagi na lang mabuti. So, paano natin i-address yun, Ms. Mon?
I think there's, when we listen to those who are in the middle, or those who have are listening to us, people are saying that we are self-righteous sometimes, or we are masyado kang matalino. And if you ask, for example, there's this thing like last year, people were really hyping on the fact that one candidate didn't finish college, right? You're looking at this job, but you don't have the right credentials. You're lying about your credentials, all of that. And one research showed that endeared him to those who didn't finish college, because many people, especially those who don't have the means, aren't able to finish because of one reason or other. And to them, the fact that he is that candidate is pursuing the position that he is pursuing is hope for them, right? So we have to not kind of get caught in the this, they call it bardagulan. It's so hard when you're caught in that exchange. So for me personally, I kind of step back away from it. Every so often, I consider myself an introspective person. So even if I failed, na pinatulan ko, I feel bad about it after. Na okay, what did I learn from this? Na parang, gave me tension, parang it was stress that I didn't want in my life. And I also try to look at it from the other person's perspective. And I think for any of us who is involved and active in the political discourse should also try to look at the other person's perspectives all the time. Nakaka bad trip lang if they start saying bad words and cursing at you. That's the line. Eh. Pero if it is a genuine conversation na you are sharing something that you are passionate about or facts, okay yon, masaya yon. Sana lang both sides are open. Kasi I don't think you can force them to be more open. I don't think you can force them to listen to you, genuinely listen to you. So it's having the conversation and hoping for the best.
I think yes, if we start to be open, if we start to be real human beings, we will be able to express our thoughts, our opinions, and then in the same time, we will be accepting the perspective, the opinions of other people. Maitataas natin yung antas ng ating diskurso. Diba? Again, sabi mismo, hindi lang bardagulan. Kasi okay, may certain topic tapos mapupunta na sa iba't ibang mga topics nagkakapersonalan na. Tapos after 2 minutes, wala nang sense yung pinag-uusapan. Nag-aaway na lang.
It becomes really more like we should tama si Miss Mona, we should take away ourselves from the personalities. Kasi minsan it's about defending one personality over the other. It's always about the facts and really, objectivity.
Yes.
I'm very I don't like the colors when people are using colors. So I understand the branding, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Pero when they start associating certain colors with an ideology and bastardizing already the names, that doesn't go down well with me. I think it's not very creative. There are just better ways to have conversations with people you don't agree with.
Let's show to ourselves that we are world-class people. Diba? Huwag na sa iba, sa sarili lang natin, diba? Pakita natin na world-class tayo, that we can interact, we can engage in an intellectual, an intelligence discourse. Kanina iniisip ko kung ano ang English ng bardagulan. And Ms. Mona just mentioned it, bastardize. I like that. I like it, bastardize. Ms. Mona, thank you for your time. Salamat. Again, if you will let us, we will keep on abusing you kasi talagang kukunin natin. But then again, of course, we have to respect your time as well. I mean, we have learned a lot. Great insights. Ang daming laman na mga sinabi nyo. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I also enjoyed napakasayang conversation, and I'm happy to do this. And it was great to meet all of you. Salamat.
Ms. Mona, I hope this is not the last time. This is not the first and the last.
Sure.
Thank
Hindi
you.
ko alam kung meron pa ako share. Dapat kayo naman na magkwento next time.
Pwede pa natin busisiyan. Daming mga points di ba?
Marami. Yeah.
Di ba?
Thank you talaga. Professor?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Miss Mona. Thank you. She responded to my Facebook message. But if there's one thing I learned about from Miss Mona is really becoming the objectifying really what's happening. And alam mo, naalala ko yung sinabi ng isang guest natin, si G. The Filipinos are very clannish in nature. And I agree kay Miss Mona, she doesn't believe in colors because that really creates that clan thing. And then when you have clans, they clash. So we really need to be objective and stay with the facts. Kaya when I first saw Miss Mona's interview, sabi ko, ito, very objective. It's really something that you can really get something from. So thank you very much. And we hope this is not the last time to be our guest in our program.
Before we go
Thank
to
you, guys.
Tito Bunch, ang ganda rin yung sinabi ni Miss Mona na yung kulay, because if we, kapag masyado na natin sinegregate, diba, this color and that color, you are demonizing your own
Yeah.
Yung sarili mong, yung kapwa mo Pilipino, sinasarado mo na kagad yung pag-iisip mo, sinasarado mo na perhaps yung puso mo because they belong to that color and I belong, on this color. So asan na ang magiging discourse natin? Asan na ang paglago ng ating talino at bilang bayan? Tito Bodge.
Ako, one thing that I really picked up, and I've been teaching them to my two kids, is that critical thinking is very important. Let them use their own brains. Yun ang nawawala na ngayon. Mga bata is on the gadgets. Sasabihin mo, tawagan mo si Ginoong Google dahil doon ka na lang. Hindi naman lahat na kay Ginoong Google ay tama. Hindi naman lahat ay eksakto. Hindi lahat ay precise pagdating sa ganyan. Pero at the same time din, ilalapat ko na rin yung industry na pinanggalingan ko na sa bawat kwento may bida at may kontrabida. Just have a grain of salt or a pinch of that, a hint of thing na open-mindedness will free yourself up. So Miss Mona, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, sir. Gusto ko yung sinabi niyo eh. Gusto ko magpagawa ng t-shirt, wag maging kontrabida.
Ayan, di ba? Di ba?
Diba?
Wag maging kontrabida. Tama yan. Gawa tayong t-shirt no, na-coin natin. Wag maging kontrabida.
Yes, tama. Yes. Ms. Mona, again, thank you so much. We have learned a lot, and this is a very fruitful, very productive, discussion. Thank you, and so meaningful as well. Thank you, Ms. Mona Magno Veluz. Maraming salamat po.